Warning, this video contains a very mild spoiler for the end of Subnautica. In the last video, I took you through the process of how I built up the shader graph shader for this wormhole, which is loosely based on the one from the cutscene at the end of Subnautica. In this second and final part, I'll see if I can build up an approximation of that cutscene using a timeline animation track and some additional particle systems to spruce it up a bit. Before we get started, let's take another quick look at the Subnautica cutscene and see if we can break it down a bit. We start by flying through space around this planet before the wormhole suddenly bursts into existence with a shower of particles. Our passage through the wormhole gets faster and faster before we get this whiteout effect at the end. At full speed, the whole cutscene is over in less than 20 seconds. Running it back at a slower speed, we can see the wormhole appears more or less instantly, but that appearance is disguised by a bit of a jolt in the camera and a flash of light and particles. So we're going to need to animate the camera a bit, but also make some particle systems appear at the right time and also speed up the wormhole animation over time. The easiest way to achieve this is by using the timeline package in Unity, so make sure you have that package installed first. I've got my timeline set up already, but to create a new timeline, you just add a new empty game object, and then add a playable director component. You also need to create a timeline asset, and then drop that into the playable slot in the director. If you can't see the timeline editor window, you can open up a new one by going to Window, Sequencing, and Timeline. You can then dock this window wherever you like. I've put mine down here so I can see the editor window at the same time. Okay, so with that set up and ready to go, let's create some particle systems that play when the wormhole appears. The first one is a sort of burst that flies past the camera. I've created a new particle system and positioned it 5 meters in front of the camera. And then I've unchecked the looping checkbox because we only want this playing once. I set the render mode to stretched billboard so that the particles appear as streaks when combined with the non-uniform start size here. I've set the start speed to 5 and the lifetime to 2. And there's a range of start colours from white through to blue. The emission is a series of 6 individual bursts spread over about a third of a second, with 35 particles in each burst. While the shape is a cone set to an angle of 45 degrees with the particles only emitting from the rim by setting the radius to 1 and having a thickness of 0. I've pointed the cone downwards by rotating it 90 degrees on the x-axis. Finally, I've set up the colour over lifetime so that the particles fade in and out smoothly by setting the start and end alpha to 0, but 100% in the middle. And then the size over lifetime is just a curve that starts small and then gets bigger towards the end. And that's it for the first particle system. The next one is quite similar to the first, but instead of a burst, it appears more like a sort of flow of streamers. Once again, we're using a non-looping system and the stretch billboard rendering mode, along with the non-uniform start size. Start speed is 5 again, and the lifetime is 2 seconds, while the duration of the whole particle system is 6 seconds. This time the start colour is a more varied range of colours. The emission for this system is at steady rate over time, but this time I've got it trailing off from high to low so that the streamers eventually disappear over the 6-second duration. The shape is a circle of 1.7 meters and a thickness of 0, angled by 90 degrees on the x-axis again so that it's face on to the camera. The colour over lifetime is the same as the first system, with a quick fade up from fully transparent to opaque and then back again. It looks to me that the Subnautica wormhole has at least a couple more particle systems in play, but 2 will do for our purposes for now, and you can add as many as you like for your purposes. We're going to need a few more things for our cutscene, like this nice picture of the Earth which I set up as a quad that faces the camera. And also a starry background, like this one which I've imported from my first game dev experiment. If you'd like to see how this works, you can go and check out that video after you've watched this one. I'll link to it in the corner now. And one last thing we'll need is a way to cause the screen to white out at the end. This is dead easy. It's just a quad placed right in front of the camera with a transparent material on it that you can turn white by changing the alpha value of the colour input. So with everything in place, we can start building our cutscene. If I click on the timeline that I created earlier, you'll see it appear in the timeline editor window down here. If I scrub the slider up and down, you can see a load of things changing in the scene, with some game objects getting activated or deactivated at different times, plus some animations on the camera and the whiteout screen appearing at the end. I won't go into the details of how to use Timeline, but I'll link to an example tutorial video in the corner now if you'd like to see more details on how to get started. For now, all you need to know is that you can create different types of tracks, such as activation tracks for turning game objects on and off, or animation tracks that use the built-in animation system to record clips right from within the timeline itself. There are other types of track that you can play around with, but I only need these two basic types for this cutscene. You can see in the first instance I have two activation tracks that start immediately by turning on the stars and the Earth. There is an animation track to control the camera during this initial pre-wormhole stage, and then the wormhole itself gets activated here, along with the two particle systems that we created earlier. The camera continues to shake for a short time, which I've done as a separate animation clip here to make it easier to fine-tune later if required. At the end of the cutscene, the whiteout quad gets activated, and then this animation clip simply increases the alpha on the material from 0 to 1 over about a second. The wormhole itself also has an animation track attached, and this is what I really wanted to show you. If I double click on the clip, you can see it open up in the animation editor window. There are a handful of values in the wormhole material that I'm animating over time here. The Fresnel power, the manual time value, the noise color magnitude, and the use manual time flag. This last one is just set to true at the start so that the manual time value actually has an effect on the material, just in case we forgot to set that flag in the inspector before we click play. Selecting the Curves tab shows how each of these values changes over time, and I think this works better for showing what's going on. If I pick the manual time property, you can see how we get the wormhole animation to speed up towards the end. The curve starts quite linear, but as we get further along it starts to curve upwards, which means that the manual time is increasing at an accelerating rate, and so the animation appears to speed up. But the really fancy stuff comes when we animate some of the other properties like the Fresnel power and the noise color magnitude. To get that initial burst of light, I start with the Fresnel power at quite a low value of 1 and the noise color magnitude cranked right up to 2. These then quickly settle down into their more stable values of about 6 for the Fresnel power and 0.3 for the noise color magnitude for most of the rest of the clip. Right at the end we crank up the brightness of the wormhole again by decreasing the Fresnel power and increasing the noise color magnitude. Combined with the increasing alpha of the whiteout quad, we get that final burst of light right at the end of the cutscene. And that's all there is to it really. I'll play the final cutscene with the editor and game window side by side so you can see what's going on behind the scenes as it plays. I'd say we got pretty close to the look of a Subnautica wormhole. Theirs is a bit more polished with some better texture details and a couple more particle effects, but overall we did alright, and I think this is a great place to start if you wanted to create your own version. If you'd like to grab the project files, head over to the itch.io page using the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll have a new game dev experiment video for you soon. Bye for now.